And I can say that from the heart, everyone here is grateful for your activities and could not be more proud of the solution you arrived at for us all. And so thank you. Chairwoman Clyburn, let's give it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What an incredible day to begin a morning in Las Vegas. Thank you, Mr. Berry, Steve, if you'll give me permission to, for that generous introduction, for the warm embrace. And good morning once again, everyone. I appreciate all of you for attending this morning's session. When I got on the plane yesterday, I thought I would only have to pause in my remarks to mention the horrific tragedy in Colorado. Then came the breaking, unimaginable horror, the news, caused by the shooting in the Navy Yard in DC. So before I begin, please allow me to offer my most sincere condolences to the families and loved ones of those 12 victims who lost their lives on yesterday, and for those in Colorado. We hope that the worst is past, but in the meantime, I want to assure you that the FCC will continue to monitor and evaluate and respond as needed to help ensure that our nation's communications infrastructure works well and works best when people need it the most. I'm guessing that the majority of people visiting Las Vegas are still asleep or just coming in for the night, and I promise not to take a poll in this room on where you all fall. Since most of us could use a little joke this time of morning, I'm going to do something a little unorthodox and open with my best closer, 700 megahertz interoperability. When I was sworn in as acting chair of the FCC in May, I knew there was a limited amount of time to try and make a lasting impact. So in laying out my agenda, I surveyed the FCC's dockets for items that met a few criteria. They had to be high impact. Issues I had prioritized since my arrival, which were generally those that were pro-consumer and pro-little guys and little gals, and thorny, long-standing issues that would benefit the most from a little extra push. I absolutely love challenges. And since I am in Vegas, let's just say that I am not intimidated by long odds. 700 megahertz interoperability certainly fits the bill. As you know, when the Commission auctioned this spectrum in 2008, it was widely anticipated that deployment of this valuable spectrum would result in greater innovation and competition options for consumers. Unfortunately, the lack of interoperability in the band prevented many consumers from realizing those benefits. But last week, after many frustrating years, CCA, AT&T, the Interoperability Alliance, DISH, and consumer advocacy groups working with the FCC staff finally reached a voluntary industry solution that will resolve the lack of interoperability in a lower 700 megahertz band in the most efficient manner. Under the agreement, AT&T will modify its 700 megahertz LTE network with new software that will enable it to support Band 12 capable devices and also work with manufacturers to develop devices that support Band Class 12. In plain English, which I prefer, it will be easier for your customers to roam on AT&T's LTE network, and devices like the iPhone that used to work exclusively for AT&T will soon work on your networks in the 700 megahertz band. This is a big deal. I won't quote Joe Biden here, but this is a big win for consumers, especially in rural areas, who will see more competition and more choices. Also, by making it easier for small wireless carriers to compete. Today's interoperability solution will spur private investment, job creation, and the development of innovative new services and devices. This non-regulatory, yes, I'm saying it as a regular later, non-regulatory pro-consumer solution would not have been possible. It would not have happened when it did without the tireless efforts of CCA's leadership and its members. So I just want to take this opportunity to once again say thank you, Steve and Rebecca, and to all of you, thanks so very much. Your country thanks you, even if they don't know it. So we got it. Thank you. So we got this little deal on 700 megahertz interoperability. So that means our work is done, and we can just go hit the tables, right? Well, no such luck. Be assured, however, that we will be watching at the FCC the implementation of the agreement with a very, very, very close eye. For this issue is important to me and to the members of CCA to not see it through. It is obvious from this item and more that the FCC is pursuing an extensive agenda to spur innovation, investment, and competition in the mobile sector. Why? Because few, if any, sectors in our economy hold more promise to give and drive economic growth, job creation, U.S. competitiveness, and practical improvements in our quality of life than wireless. From medical monitoring devices to interactive digital textbooks to the smartphones in our pockets and pocketbooks that have an app for just about everything, mobile technology enables revolutionary change. Just a few stats to illustrate its scope. When then Senator Barack Obama was elected president, only about 13% of Americans had smartphones. Today, that number is 56% and climbing, and today's smartphones have as much computing power as the lunar module that put a man on the moon. The apps economy, which didn't even exist in 2008, has already created 500,000 US jobs. And here's one last stat that's almost hard to comprehend. According to McKinsey, the annual economic impact of mobile broadband globally could grow to $10.8 trillion by 2025. Not billion, but trillion. To me, that's incredible. So we need to make sure that every American can take part in the mobile revolution. We need you, CCA, our regional, our smaller and rural carriers to achieve this goal and seize the opportunities for you not only make massive investments in our mobile infrastructure, you develop innovative services and products to consumers, to your customers, such as flexible contract and pricing options. We also need smart policies coming from Washington, and again, this will only occur with engagement from you. So what else are we working on at the FCC? Our mobile agenda essentially falls into 4 buckets, which are complementary and have some overlap: promoting competition, empowering consumers, unleashing spectrum, and spurring investment. Well, since this is the Competitive Carriers Association, I'll start with competition. You didn't expect that, right? Competition, an essential driver of investment innovation, must be preserved as it is the best way to protect the growing percentage of Americans who rely solely on mobile services for the communications needs. I've already spoken about how important interoperability in the lower 700 megahertz band was promoting and could promote competition, but another significant pro-competitive action was the FCC's order mandating data roaming among mobile broadband providers. Data roaming, I don't have to tell you, is critical to supporting competition and innovation. It permits providers to enter markets that others may deem hard to serve, and it allows consumers in rural areas to have more choice. Every carrier has a potential need to roam on networks built by others, and I'm pleased that the courts have upheld the Commission's data roaming order. I am also interested in the progress made by the industry towards creating more fair roaming agreements. We're proud of the work we've done at the Commission, but our work is far from done. There are many smaller carriers that serve rural America or compete regionally that provide critical service to consumers, but are struggling for a foothold. So we will continue to work hard to ensure that all Americans are served and are served by a competitive and fair environment. I think it's fair to say that promoting competition is the FCC's most important pro-consumer policy, but there are other policies of interest to CCA that I see falling in the consumer empowerment bucket. Protecting consumers is at the core of the FCC's statutory mission, and I am pleased to say that we have been able to work with your members and other carriers to reach a voluntary industry solution to consumer problems. For example, bill shock is a problem that costs millions of wireless customers hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in unexpected charges. After working with the FCC in good faith to find solutions, CCA members and the rest of the industry agreed to provide alerts to approximately 97% of the U.S. wireless customers when they are approaching their monthly limits for voice, text, data, and international roaming. Then there's cell phone unlocking. I am on record as supporting policies that enable consumers to lawfully unlock their mobile telephones so they can seamlessly move from one carrier to another. While wireless carriers should be able to enforce their valid customer contracts, unlocking provisions need to be grounded in common sense and practical applications. Consumers who satisfy the reasonable terms of their contracts should not be subjected to civil or criminal penalties if they want to take their device to a new carrier. I recently asked the FCC staff to redouble their efforts to explore all possibilities with industry and stakeholders to achieve consumer-friendly cell phone unlocking policies. I applaud CCA's members that already offer consumers the ability to seamlessly unlock a cell phone. We are moving quickly with industry to develop a baseline standard that reduces consumer frustration and promotes consumer access to unlocked devices. Another critical area where the FCC wants to work with wireless carriers of all sizes to protect consumers is public safety. We talk a lot about the benefits of mobile communications, but certainly none is greater than the fact that it can save lives. To fully realize that potential, we need to modernize 911. Many Americans would be surprised to learn that in most areas of our great nation, you cannot text 911. It is imperative that our emergency response system is compatible in the ways in which people communicate in 2013. Being able to text 911 is critical in so many ways. It allows for millions with hearing and speech disabilities the same access to 911 that others have. It also permits people to contact emergency officials when a voice call would put them in more danger. So transition to next generation 911 has been at the top of our public safety agenda. And as a part of our effort to modernize 911, the Commission recently adopted a requirement that wireless service providers and certain providers of over-the-top texting applications send a bounce-back message to consumers that attempt to send a text to 911 where service is not available. When it comes to 911 services, another critical issue is location accuracy. We've learned that tracing the location of a caller using mobile phone indoors has become increasingly difficult. As more consumers cut the cord and rely only on wireless services, we need to ensure that callers can be located by first responders no matter where they are. So we're in the process of examining this issue and welcome your input to the formulation of next steps. Obviously, spectrum is the lifeblood of mobile communications, and of course, all eyes are on the upcoming incentive auction. This unprecedented two-sided auction will use the power of the market to repurpose beachfront spectrum used by TV broadcasters for wireless broadband. The FCC staff continues their work on the incentive auction with the goal of conducting an auction in 2014. We all know that the auction in the 600 megahertz band will create opportunities for wireless providers and broadcasters alike. I remain committed to facilitating access by all providers to valuable spectrum resources, including the 600 megahertz band. I am also interested in the opportunities that the incentive auction will create for small businesses. The transition of the 600 megahertz band to advanced wireless service use has the ability to create jobs and spur innovation across this great nation. From the construction crews working on broadcast towers, to the competitive carriers providing service to consumers, to the start-ups that will develop that great Hot Next app, small businesses have the opportunity to benefit at every stage. Running parallel to the incentive auctions, we also have an open proceeding regarding how we measure spectrum aggregation and its impact on competition in the wireless space. Our current spectrum holdings policies predate the iPhone, Android phones, tablets, app stores, and the spectrum crunch. Clearly, an update was due. That brings me to my fourth and final bucket, spurring investment in infrastructure. As you know, our mobile infrastructure relies overwhelmingly on private investment. So the Commission has made it a priority to remove red tape that saps resources and slows broadband deployment. We've reduced the cost and significantly shortened the time to attach communications equipment to utility poles, establishing a 90-day shot clock to speed approval by municipalities of new wireless towers. Recently, I circulated to my fellow commissioners a notice of proposed rulemaking on important wireless infrastructure issues that we will consider at our meeting next week. It is my sincere hope that this proceeding will lead to smart policies that accelerate the deployment of infrastructure while holding our duty to protect our nation's environment, tribal, and historic resources. As you know, there are some areas where the business case can't be made for wireless carriers to further invest. That's why, as part of the Commission's universal service reform, we established the Mobility Fund to close gaps in mobile network coverage using market-based reverse auctions to ensure funding is widely spent and efficiently spent. I share and appreciate CCA's commitment to implementing universal service reform in a manner that maximizes consumer benefits. Wide participation by qualified carriers, including rural, mid-size, and regional providers, is central to achieving this goal. So I so much look forward to keeping an open dialogue as we continue our efforts to implement the Connect America Fund and the Mobility Fund. These are just a few of the highlights of the FCC's most aggressive mobile agenda, and as you've heard repeatedly, achieving many of our goals will require all of us working together. So thank you so very much for allowing me to join you today. My door, of course, remains open, and I look forward to continuing our work with CCA and its members long into the future. Have a great conference. Godspeed.
Thank you. I know that everyone wants to thank the chairwoman for her good work, but we couldn't miss the opportunity to share some tangible evidence of our gratitude. So on behalf of the board and the entire CCA membership, we'd like to present you with the 2013 Competitive Champion Award from CCA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Safe travels. Again, I'd like to thank you. I know that she has a tight schedule and has to be getting on the plane back to Washington, D.C. But thank you again. Please feel free to display that CCA memento in your office. Thank you so very much. I know it's a tough act to follow.